welcome to the webinar today. My name is Gina Hartman, and I'm the Learning and Innovation Manager here at Schoology. I'm excited to be part of this conversation today because I'm very passionate about collaboration in education and digital learning and just how powerful it can be. 3 amazing educators from Ohio are going to be joining me today to tell you more about the Ohio Blended Collaborative. What this group of educators have started and accomplished is really a model or blueprint for effective collaboration in education, which can truly transform teaching and learning. It looks like we still have some other people coming into the webinar, so I want to take just a minute to give everyone a chance to come in. While they're coming in, we're going to collect some information from you. We'd like to have an idea of who is in the audience today. So if you wouldn't mind responding to the poll that you're going to see displayed on your screen, that would be great. This information is just going to help us tailor some of the conversation today. Looks like we have lots of responses coming in. We're going to keep that up just a little bit, give everybody a chance to still respond to that poll. While we have that poll up, I want to tell you just one way that you can be part of the conversation today. You will be able to submit your questions in the questions tab, the questions area, and go to webinar. Our team will be monitoring the questions coming in, and we will take some time to answer those questions towards the end of the webinar. Looks like maybe some of the responses have stopped coming in. It looks like we have about 77% of people that logged in that have voted. So we'll go ahead and display those results so we can see who's on the webinar. So it looks like we have about 40% of the people on the webinar today are maybe in a coordinator or instructional technology role or position. We have about 20% that are instructors. And then we have a handful of curriculum people, tech directors, and even instructional coaches in the audience today. So we're really excited to have you all here, and we have some great things to share with you today. I want to go ahead and introduce you to everyone else that is on the webinar. You're going to see my picture listed first. As I already mentioned, I'm Gina. I'm the Learning and Innovation Manager here at Schoology, and I'm part of the professional development team. My team gets the opportunity to work with educators across the nation to help build and sustain organizations' pedagogical shift to blended learning. There are also 3 very innovative educators from Ohio joining me today on the webinar. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Jennifer to let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Fry, and I'm the Technology Integration Coordinator for Westerville City Schools in Westerville, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus.
Hi, I'm Jessica Fields. I'm with Olentangy Local Schools. I've had the privilege of being with them for 12 years. I'm currently an instructional technology supervisor for the district.
And I'm Christopher Dice. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Grandview Heights Schools here in Columbus, Ohio. New to this role, but not new to Ohio Blended Collaborative, just carrying it over from my previous district, which is Marysville Schools in Ohio.
Thank you, Jennifer, Jessica, and Chris. It's fabulous having you guys here today. Let me tell everyone in the audience a little bit about what the plan is before we jump right in. First, you're going to hear from Chris, Jennifer, and Jessica about the Ohio Blended Collaborative, what it is and how it all began. They're also going to share the collaborative structure they put in place to get this started. And you're going to hear about their keys to success and lessons they learned throughout the process. You're also going to walk away with some best practices for building effective collaborations. One final thing that I want to mention to everybody before we jump right in is that you can join the conversation by using the hashtag #LearnWithSchoology. You will actually see this hashtag listed in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen on the slides. So I just want to encourage you to go ahead and tweet your takeaways, get involved in the conversation, and all of us in the webinar, would also love to continue to connect with you after the webinar ends today. So let's go ahead and jump right in. I'm going to pass it over to Chris to get us started and go ahead and tell us about the Ohio Blended Collaborative.
Thanks, Gina. Gina, you and I have known each other for a couple of years just simply because of being at Next and the program that Schoology offers and all the training that's out there. You know, some of the things that, one of the things I'm very proud of is obviously Ohio Blended Collaborative. And this is really, it's a collaborative of districts, of leaders from districts to develop content and develop professional development for their teachers, you know, in the area of blended learning, and just to help to innovate and move the needle. And opposed to all of us reinventing the wheel and doing it ourselves, we kind of developed this collaborative. And it all started years ago. Jessica and I actually were in the same district, and I had moved from that district to my previous district, so 3 districts ago. And Jessica and I wanted to continue to work together, and Schoology was one of those platforms that would allow us to do this. Because prior to that, I had been working, or trying to work is a better way to put it, with districts. And there are 4 districts specifically in Central Ohio. And this was our 3rd attempt at building a collaborative. And the first 2 attempts failed, but you know, like anything else, we learned from those failures. So when those first districts were trying to develop a collaborative, we kept on stumbling over 2 big things, and nobody could kind of resolve those issues. And one was, where are we going to keep the content, which was huge. And the other thing was, you know, how are we going to verify content between each other? When one district creates content, how's the other district going to verify that that's quality content? So Jessica and I started working together, and we brought Jen in, which she's from Westerville. And so Jessica, Jen, and I got together and started to formulate and solve these problems. And really the 2 big problems that needed solved was, you know, how are you going to verify the content, where are you going to put it? The where was very easy because we were all Schoology districts. And so obviously we all wanted to move to putting that content in Schoology. It made it very easy for us to share that. And then on top of that, you know, verifying the content. So we are all very busy at what we do, and to respect that, we partnered with a 3rd-party organization, just a consulting company that does professional development for teachers. And it's Connecting Ed is the name of the company. And what we were able to do with Connecting Ed is have them act as the verifiers. They're the ones that actually would deliver a lot of the professional development to the teachers in the districts, and we bring them all together. And then they also were, you know, kind of working with the teachers to make sure that the quality of the content that was being developed met our standards for the rubrics that we created. So, you know, teaming with Connecting Ed and all of us willing to take the risk on for seeing this, you know, this vision, this shared vision that we had, and knowing that we could innovate through this process in order to make sure that we're all moving the needle for all of our districts, that we're taking them from, you know, 1 or 2, 3 steps forward in this blended environment. So that more or less, that's kind of how it all got started, and we're very proud of that. I think we've all learned a lot in this process, and we're very happy to share what we've learned.
Great, thanks for sharing some of that background information, Chris. You know, we all know that the infrastructure, resources, and just the structure of school districts can definitely vary. So I wondered if each of you could just tell us a little bit more about your district and really why you wanted to do this.
Well, I'll go ahead and start. At the time, I was in Marysville, and Marysville Schools has about 5,000 students. That's a mid-sized district in Ohio. And we had a few things that were really pushing us to that. Well, we had a superintendent that she's pedal to the metal. Diane Mankins was my superintendent there, and she was phenomenal as far as pushing us to make sure that we were doing everything we could to support our educators and to support our students. And we were new to blended learning. I think it was a revolution going on in that district as far as what we were offering, and a lot of things were changing. So not long after I got in there, we started moving the needle as far as adopting a blended environment. So we adopted Google. We hadn't had any kind of online platform part of that. The teachers selected Schoology after a long intensive review. And so, you know, with Google and Schoology right there, we knew we now had some tools, but nobody knew how to use them or use them effectively. So, you know, part of that was that blank slate mentality of, you know, when you first get Schoology, as a teacher, you look at your course and it's empty, and it's kind of scary. It's, you know, for a teacher who's never ever used a learning management system before, it's like staring, you know, it's probably like showing a dry erase board to a caveman. You know, they just don't know what to do with it. They have no idea. So, you know, I knew that we needed to get our teachers over that hump with the digital content, and I wanted to create experts in our buildings, prepare our teachers. We have embedded experts in our departments and in every grade level that knew how to use Google, knew how to use Schoology, so we could maximize, you know, any kind of instruction that we wanted to do as we also, at the time, not long after that, move one-to-one.
So this is Jen from Westerville, and our situation is that we are one of the larger school districts in Ohio. We have 15,000 students. We're not currently a one-to-one district. We are 2-to-1. So our students always have access, or usually have access to devices. They do not take them home. One of our main reasons for joining the collaborative was that we wanted to enhance our curriculum materials that we have, and we wanted to also build capacity in our teachers to be able to develop materials on their own so that they could better be able to successfully work in a blended environment and personalize instruction for their students. We also purchase a lot of digital products and spend a lot of money on curriculum materials. It's kind of our hope that over time we may be able to replace some of those publisher types of resources with things that have been created by our teachers. That's something that we hope to grow into.
This is Jessica with Olentangy. My story is a little bit different as well. I am the largest district in the OBC, so we have around 21,000 students currently, and with that, you have some budget restraints. You only have the ability, especially with online materials that have reoccurring annual cost, to buy a seat per student is pretty intensive. So we said, instead of spending, all of this money on curricular materials, let's pay our teachers, because a lot of them were leveraging open education resources, and a lot of them had already created. We had been in Schoology for about 4 years at that point, so we were to a point where teachers were starting to create material in Schoology, and that it would be a really good partnership. And what we do is, because we have so many students, we are not a one-to-one district. We have about 1 device per every 3 students. And so we really promote station rotation as our blended model in our district.
Jessica, so for those people maybe in the audience today who aren't familiar with station rotation, I wondered if you could explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. With the blended models, the station rotation is similar to learning stations in a elementary classroom. However, one of the stations is typically our tech station. So we usually try to encourage teachers to have about 4 stations in their classroom. And I like this because it really encourages the blend. It's not just technology for technology's sake. It's really, how can we best differentiate in the classroom? So if you can envision almost 4 corners of a classroom, where one of the corners is the tech station, which allows for me to have about 5 to 8 devices. So the students at that station could be doing something on Schoology. So that could be a discussion board. That could be Google Assignments to the new Google Assignment app. That could be just looking at video and media that is loaded into some of the OBC courses. And typically at the other stations, they might be doing collaborative work. One might be an independent station. And then the other station is the teacher-led station. So this is where a teacher is typically, still providing direct instruction, but the student to teacher ratio is, a 1/4 of the whole class. So they're able to really personalize the needs of their students.
Great, thanks for sharing that, Jessica. So now that we know what the Ohio Blended Collaborative is, your reasons for kind of starting this powerful collaborative effort, I wondered if you could tell everyone on the webinar a little bit more about the current process or how it's developed over time.
This is Jen. The evolution of the OBC and the fact that it keeps on growing and developing every year has been one of the most enjoyable things to go through as a person who's always trying to learn. We started off with, just the big idea, what we were trying to do, without really a whole lot of supports in place. We had our Connecting Ed group that we were working with. We knew that we wanted to bring in high quality teachers. And we had a few things in place, but we found over time that we needed to develop out other processes in order to be able to make it work and to keep it on the right track and bring in more districts as we went. So some of the strategies that we have kind of developed over time are defining what some readiness for teachers coming into the collaborative. We've developed rubrics for that. We've developed rubrics for our courses. We have a course design guide and rubrics for evaluating that the Connecting Ed uses to give feedback to the teachers. And one of the things that we've really come upon is that after we wrote a course and we took 1 year to do that, we realized that that really wasn't enough time to fully develop out a course, and we decided to put our courses into a second year of revision. So we've developed a revision cycle. And the life cycle of a course for us is now looking like year one, we build the structure, we build a full course, and that's either done with one educator or two working collaboratively together. Sometimes they're from the same district. It could be two teachers from across the districts, and sometimes it's just one teacher. And they develop the course. And then in year two, we take the course and we take it out to all of the other districts who bring in revision lead teachers or revision teachers to give feedback to the course revision lead. And they're using the materials, they're adding materials to it, they're giving feedback on the course, and just living through it for a year while giving continual feedback so that the course lead can continue to improve the course. And then after the second year, the course is going to go into the hands of the districts and be considered a completed course materials ready to go out to districts for them to then use in the way that they need to.
And Gina, I can see that Megan had a question about with the new assessment feature that just came out on Schoology, how we envision this, integrating with the current OBC courses. So what's kind of fascinating is we just had a meeting yesterday and we were talking about next year what we would like to do, because at this point we have 28 courses, to kind of stop, pause, and really take in all the feedback from the teachers who are currently using it, and then potentially incorporating some of the new assessment features and some of the new assessment test question items.
That's great. Thanks for going ahead and answering that question that came in. Yeah, about your revision process.
So I see that Matt also asked a question about what's our maintenance after a course is completed. And so it's a dynamic process. Nothing will ever be completed. Although it's completed for release, it's never really going to be completed. It's up to the collaborative itself, and that's one of the beautiful parts about the collaborative, is that we all share in the decision making of what we want to do next. And we come together multiple times a year, all 10 of us right now, and try to decide what we're going to do next. So Matt, you bring up a really good point, and this is one that we've talked about multiple times. What do we do next? Like, what do we do with that material once that course gets to be 3 and 4 years old? And that's a valid question, because it's something that we're going to have to address. We're going to address it collaboratively and try and figure out what's best for OBC. But inevitably, that content has to be revised, right? So that content has to be made better, more relevant, updated. And so that'll become part of OBC to not only look to the future of what's new that we have to create, not only look to what's currently in cycle that we're creating, but also look back and say, hey, there's some material we made 2, 3, 4 years ago that really could use updated, and we'll have to figure out a way around that. Completely confident that we will do that, but that'll have to be part of our process.
Thanks. So I'm wondering about some of your successes at this point. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, Gina, what I find was fascinating at the beginning of this process is that we quickly, the three of us, found that we were not the only ones struggling with this. All of the districts and some of the districts we were working with in Ohio, they were all trying to figure out a way to help teachers, teach in 2017, 2016, in the 21st century. And it's almost like drinking out of a fire hose sometimes when you're on the web and the amount of learning modules and resources that you have. And so we knew that we had to approach this together. And we reached out to districts who we had worked with on other projects, and some saw us in present at conferences, and we were able to grow to 10 districts. So what's great about the collaboration process is the more districts that get involved, the more content, the more robust, the more resources we have. And what I'm most proud of is in my district that I've seen an increase in the use of the learning management system as personalized learning. Again, this is our 7th year with Schoology, and I would find that there were courses that were just list of links after link after link. And for teachers to be able to look at these OBC course shells, it really gets them to see how students can interact with the teacher. It's really a two-way communication, ebb and flow. It's not just here, click on this and watch this video. One thing that kind of stands out too for the teachers that we selected to develop the courses, these are like our most gifted, tech, future-ready teachers, and to deliver PD to them was very difficult. So they found, coming out of this, working with Connecting Ed, that it was some of the best PD that they've ever had, and they've actually brought it back to their buildings and has started like small collaboration, taking the same model that we've implemented and have been working with their grade levels. So I know that in the poll at the beginning, there were a lot of instructional coaches. This is a fantastic strategy if you want to have something go either grade level specific or department specific. If you set up a rubric and you have them build in Schoology, it's such an easy way to share resources. So I have 23 buildings, going to be 24 buildings in my district. And so in order to share, we needed this, and we needed Schoology. The other thing that I want to address is the last bullet point, Gina, there, that we've had the ability now to develop 28 courses. That's in 3 years. In 3 years, we have developed, and again, we want to mention that this is still a shell, and we're working through really, continuing this evolution process. But we were able to produce, up to date 28 to 30 courses. And what's nice about this is if you look at the courses on your screen, we did this strategically. So we came in as the instructional technology leaders and curriculum leaders of our district, and we said, where do we need resources? Where are teachers asking for supplemental resources? Where do they need content? Where do they need help? And we kind of started making courses around the courses that were the most, what would you guys say, that need the most high demand. And then what we also tried to do is we try to create consistency. So if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see that for our English class, we created courses 9 through 12. We didn't want one grade to have this awesome blended learning experience, and then in 10th grade, that teacher not have resources to do the same thing for their students. So you'll start to see bands of learning, and that's been, just a really great thing to be a part of.
So just to add to that, Jessica did a great job kind of defining what we did as far as the courses, and a big part of that was, where are our gaps, where are our highest demand, but in conjunction with that, we had to weigh that and balance that with where do we have educators who are ready for OBC, where do we have educators who are close to making that step and that leap in order to be able to develop high quality content. So that was a balancing act of not only finding where the gaps were, but also where we had capacity.
Yeah, and it looks like we had a question come in from Megan. She was asking just about if your courses have a similar format, how it was set up, and actually we have a screenshot that you shared with us. So I wondered if you could tell everyone a little bit more about that, some of the components in your courses that are being built.
Sure. So this is Jen. If you take a look at the anatomy of an OBC course, they do have a similar feel and expectations for what's happening in them. The courses have to have a course overview. They have to have they need to have a plan for how the teacher would implement it. That's something that they share with teachers, like how the course would look in action. They need to have an assessment component. So the course shells, we use a design plan that they have to follow. So all of the courses have a similar look and a similar feel, but then within that, the teachers are able to put their own touch on it and to kind of navigate that in a way that makes sense for them.
And I do want to say too, if you look at the folder that's expanded a little bit, we do follow UBD model for developing our lesson plans and our units. So you will see that it has a performance task, that it has an assessment, that as these students go through these learning modules, they have the ability to know that if they master this, this is what, lets them move on potentially to the next unit. So what's really nice is we shared all 3 stories. So some districts that are one-to-one, they could utilize this entire unit too. For my district, depending on the access to devices, a teacher could go in and they could just use the assessment folder. So they would use the magic cog to the right, and they would copy that folder over to their course. Or one might say, you know what, my ancient Greece unit, it just needs a little bit more pizzazz. They can go in here and they can kind of look at the library resources, and then they can copy that over to their course.
And part of this as well is, this is a year-long process, and it starts with our summer boot camp. So we're pulling teachers in for 3 intense days of professional development. So early in the process, we're showing them examples of what's to be expected of the structure, and we're letting them, produce a little bit of content, and we're showing them how to utilize, if they don't know, which most of them do, but if they don't know, we're showing them how to utilize Schoology and how to create all of these things. And then we create our own little internal sharing framework. Obviously, there's a group, a high blended collaborative group for every year. So if anybody has questions, they can post back to the group. How do you create this content? How do you do that? And so we really help kind of build out the structure. But yeah, we have a rubric and we have an expectation of this is what the format of the course should look and feel like for consistency.
Great. Thanks for sharing all that detailed information. You really have a powerful process in place. Collaboration in education can look very different for educators. We could collaborate on a smaller scale with another educator, with a group of educators in a department, or a professional learning community, also known as a PLC. Or it could be on a much larger scale, like what we're hearing about today from you guys. Whatever the case, collaboration in education can be very powerful and beneficial. I always like to say when I'm working with educators, multiple heads, multiple brains are better than one. So I wondered if the 3 of you could go ahead and just share through your experience in this powerful collaboration. If you could tell us more about really what you kind of feel are the keys to collaboration and just lessons you've learned throughout the process.
So, I guess there's a lot of lessons learned, right? So we're learning something every day that we get together, that we get to share stories, we get to bounce things off of one another, and we get to go ahead and kind of play out what we think is next. As far as, I don't want to say our next slide has some elements on here that we're talking about, as far as like the resources and brain power and the production. It's a lesson, as we look at the keys to this, these are the keys, kind of what we have there. And what we want is we want to develop teachers that want to work together, right? So obviously that's part of it, is that if we have teachers that want to work together, we're making that connection across districts so that we're trying to open up their network so that they can grow as an educator. Obviously, one thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we are bringing together content for the teachers, which is curating the content. We're training them on how to create content. Again, that's that scary whiteboard that is out there. We don't want them to be too scared of Schoology by any means. We want them to feel very comfortable in using it with their students. And we also want to make sure that they can share the content, knowing how to share among either the department, knowing how to share among their, across districts as well. And I think that's, Jeremy had posted a question, how are courses shared to other districts? And that's a great question. That was one of the reasons why early on, when I tried to start these collaboratives years ago, they didn't work, is because how are you going to share it? And Schoology made that easy. We just create a group. We put the content in the group, and there are people in every single one of the districts that have access to that group. They can copy those resources and materials out to their teachers, their departments, grade levels, however we choose to do it. And the materials, I mean, that's all well and good. And again, you know, to go back to some of the stuff we talked about, the materials are one part of it, and the resources are one part of it that we shared. The biggest change to me personally is the fact that, you know, it's that brain power. The teachers now have developed into a much better educator. They are, you know, they know how to work in this environment. That to me is more valuable than just having resources to share. If we can develop educators so that they are comfortable in creating content, we feel they can make the best content for the students because they know their students best. So, you know, basically, we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we are, you know, this is, looking at the slide that we're looking at now, 4 questions to ask before collaborating. So the first one there is, you know, what's something you could individually, that would be better done collaboratively? Well, there's a lot of things school districts do. Everybody duplicates work, seemingly, and that's one of the things that we wanted to get around. And so OBC has looked at, you know, we throw everything on the table. When we get around a table, we say, okay, what are some of the things you're doing? And whether we're partnering in all 10 districts or just 2 or 3 of us are partnering on something special, we try to find something that we can share that workload, because we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel. That's, you know, to me, that's ridiculous.
One of the other things that really I think has helped us to be able to launch and to continue to grow is that a structure that we put in place from the very beginning was that every district that comes into the collaborative has equal standing with all the other districts, and everyone has their ideas get to be contributed. We consider everyone's ideas and we make decisions together. So there's no one district that's more powerful than the other or makes more decisions than the other. Everybody is valued in it. And I think that that's a really important structure and foundation that's enabled us to be successful.
Absolutely. So I'm lucky that they placate my ideas. Sometimes they don't like my ideas, but, you know, Gina, you know me well enough that some of my ideas can be crazy, but some of them have taken off. So with that, though, you know, one of the things is that how do you structure collaboration for success? I think in order to do that, we had to throw out the definition of success. So we had to say that part of the definition of our success is that we're working together, that we're not independently doing the work. It wasn't we're just coming together to talk and discuss, but then all going back to solve the problem separately. We're coming together, we're discussing the problem, we're solving the problem together, and then we're taking that solution back to our district. So I think that's kind of huge for us. You know, platforms for user collaboration, well, obviously Schoology is a huge one for us, because that's kind of what we based on. We actually do have a district that's not using Schoology, that, you know, they're building, but we're working with them on using QTI and Common Cartridge to kind of to play around with moving content. You know, the idea is that we as a collaborative, we want to work with anybody and everybody that wants to work with us, because we feel everybody has value and everybody's going to bring something to the table. So it's pretty powerful in that. So platforms collaboration, anything that we can utilize to leverage to make it easier on us and to make it easier on all the districts that are involved. And then the last thing is just, you know, what's the most current need you could benefit from collaboration? And there are tons of needs. You have to ask yourself that question, and everybody that comes to that table, we ask that question too, because whatever you bring to the table, Jessica, Jen, and I have all brought things to the table that have become lengthy discussions for the group.
I think one thing that's pretty fascinating with this idea of collaboration in Schoology is I have my guidance counselors. They're collaborating on their student service page. I have all of our district PD that is built into a Schoology page, and all the principals are loaded into that one course, and they use that course to present their professional development to the district. I have my media specialists doing book talks in Schoology, and they will share that book talk with another media specialist. And it's so great because, again, they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I would agree. I think that is really powerful. You know, just with those different leaders, different groups that you work with in your district, just even modeling how you're using it, modeling when you're working with the administrators or working with, you know, your librarians or your different groups. I really think that can have a powerful effect and impact. What I want to do now is, you know, you guys have shared so much wonderful information with us, and really how powerful, you know, this collaborative effort is with you guys, with you building the Ohio Blended Collaborative. I think it's a great time to go ahead and maybe go back to the audience and collect some feedback from them. I'd like everyone to kind of think of a time when you were part of a successful collaboration. What 2 ingredients would you consider the most important in that collaboration? You should see on your screen now, you should see a poll with some options. So if you guys would just take a little bit of time and respond to that poll, we just want to hear from you a little bit. After we give everyone on the webinar a chance to respond to the poll, you're actually going to hear from the Ohio team again about what they consider the ingredients of a successful and healthy collaboration. So go ahead and take about, 10 more seconds and respond to that poll. It looks like responses are still coming in. And we'll see what everybody on the webinar thinks are some of the most important ingredients. Okay, maybe we'll go ahead and view those results and see what everyone thinks. So it looks like about 37% of you believe that, you know, a common philosophy and shared vision is very important to a healthy collaboration. And then it looks like coming in actually second, which is tied, is flexibility and also establishing expectations in a rubric. And I know the Ohio team's actually going to talk a little bit more about this. And then coming up, about 15% of you believe that ample time for participation, you know, is also very important. And then just also the ability to take risk. You know, we do know just anything in education, having that ability is also very important. So let's go ahead and let's hear from the Ohio team again and just about what they feel are some of the ingredients to successful collaboration. I'll go ahead and pass it back over to you guys.
Yeah, so on the screen, you know, when we started this process, we really talked about collaboration because everybody has tried it and it can be very, very difficult and it can fail very, very easily. So we knew that we wanted this, we needed to set it up. So these were the ingredients that we really invested in and we made part of the process every single year. Every time, you know, I work with administrators or leaders of groups, they're like, oh yes, this is definitely what makes successful collaboration. And the question is, you know, how do you stay true to these? And what we found also as an OBC, our number one is also a shared vision. Even though we come into it with different needs, we come into it with different district dynamics, we all want to empower our Ohio educators to be able to curate, to adapt, to create, and eventually just share out. Because there is an amazing power in the World Wide Web that you can curate a lot of great open education resources and basically just adapt it to your needs. And that's kind of our mantra also when we do roll out the courses to our teachers. We tell them, hey, take a look at the shell. I want you to find what you like. And I want you to adapt it to the needs, your teaching style, the needs of your students, the needs of your classroom. There was a question posted that, you know, when there's a lot of districts working in here, how you keep the course content clean and how do you make sure that it has the same feel and the same tone. And the way in which we did that is by establishing a rubric. So the rubric has a lot of 21st century expectations, the incorporation of discussion and collaboration in group work. The rubric has things on there as simplistic as the structure, like it will have this overview for the teachers and then it will have units. What we find is that the differentiation really becomes within the folder. So the one example we had on the screen was our social studies, and that teacher embedded a lot of Google Maps so that the students could go to those places and really walk around and become part of it. Another one that you guys mentioned was flexibility, and I can tell you that sometimes it has felt that we were building this plane as we were flying it, but sometimes I think the most successful innovation and sometimes one of the most successful things I've been a part of part of have been flying and building that plane at the same time. So flexibility is, you need to know that you're going to be flexible as a leader, but also the teachers, they have flexibility in that they're creating a product for everyone, not just for their class. The other thing that was actually big for us, I don't know where that fell on the poll, was time. Education is an extremely demanding job. So unless we carved time and set time aside for our teachers to work on these courses, it was never going to happen. So they had a 3-day intensive boot camp where we went over the structure and the rubric, and they were trained in Schoology, so they knew all the ins and outs. And then they also partnered with another content specialist to kind of map out what that course would look like. They have then 1 day per quarter that we get them subs, and we're able to allow for them to work with their partner and with the other OBC teachers to build their content.
Great. Thanks for sharing, just the ingredients, what you guys think make up a successful collaboration from your experience. It's really wonderful what you've accomplished through this powerful collaboration. I'd love to kind of hear more about what's next for the Ohio Blended Collaborative, and could you tell everybody more about that?
One of the things that we're looking forward to is, how do we continue to professionally develop our teachers, and not just the teachers that are part of the writing course materials, the actual OBC writing, but how do we develop all the other teachers as they're beginning to use the course materials? What professional development do they need, and what does that look like? And so we're starting to talk about evolving into how do we harness the power of the collaborative in order to move as many teachers along and provide what they need to be able to work in this blended learning environment and be successful in personalizing learning for kids. What do they need, and how can we utilize the collaborative in order to do that? We are definitely looking forward to revising the courses that we've already built and working really hard to make those just the best quality content that we possibly can. And one thing that has been so fantastic and continues just to evolve is that the teachers who are in this collaborative can turn into future leaders. Even in our own district, one of the teachers who was a course lead writer last year ended up becoming one of our ed tech coaches this year. So it became an opportunity where it helped that person in their leadership skills, and now they're able to help us to continue to move these efforts forward. We're also, one of the things that we are starting to collaborate on and look forward to doing more of is building PD together. Again, this is something that districts do all the time. Everybody independently is creating PD for their teachers based on their district needs, but a lot of times there's overlap in that work. And so how can we work together to build together on that PD, or how can we share what we've already built so that everybody doesn't have to reinvent the wheel? Jessica, do you want to talk about OBC meetups?
Yeah, so what I would like to do now is, unfortunately, we only get to have about one, maybe 3 teachers that get to participate in the development OBC, and there are a lot of teachers that apply in my district that are not accepted. So we're trying to find opportunities where on a Saturday, we're going to develop a meetup at a local spot, and teachers that want to stop by and develop course materials around ancient civilization, they can come and meet with like-minded teachers, and they can build it together. So it's really fascinating about, Schoology, and because so many Central Ohio schools use Schoology, we have the ability to get into one course together and build the materials. I'm also starting to do, and we've been talking about doing kind of with the creating of the PD. I see that there's a question from Charles about how do you, get a school started with using Schoology to host professional development materials. And I started this with my district about 2 years ago, where I worked with all of the curriculum departments, so all of the supervisors, the gifted literacy support, our secondary and elementary curriculum. we sat down and we looked at the PD that we delivered to teachers, and I started showing them how they could make that online in Schoology. So how they could leverage media albums to post evidence. A lot of our teachers, when they take an OBC course, an OPDA course, which is our professional development, they develop a portfolio. So we're making them use the Schoology portfolio, and they have to find materials of their learning to show evidence.
Another question that I see that's on there is, you know, as far as having access or seeing all the courses that we have, if you go to our website, and I think, Gina, you're going to talk about this in a moment, have a screenshot, but ohiobc.org, that will give you a list of all the courses that we have done. Also, in conjunction with what Jessica said, as far as professional development, I know Jen has moved a lot of like her teacher onboarding, classified staff onboarding, transportation onboarding. So basically creating courses in there where, you know, we're getting the teachers onto Schoology, you know, right from the get-go in order to make sure that they're part of the organization. And then also part of Schoology's, the beauty of Schoology that I like is the communication as a platform. And, you know, some of the things that I've done in my district are things like, since we're one-to-one with Chromebooks and we authenticate off of Google, we've set Schoology as a student homepage. So we know when a kid opens up a Chromebook, the first thing they're doing is they're looking at Schoology. Staff, same way, is so that, you know, we know all of our staff, they're starting their day by going to Schoology. We're making it the hub. It's not everywhere everything has to be done there, but it is definitely a tool that kind of allows us to put all of the content, whether it's coming from the Treasurer's Department or Human Resources, or from, you know, principal down to the student, however you want to divide it up. We've made it kind of the hub or the center of the core of what we do on a day in and day out basis.
That's great. You know, I love, as you guys are kind of telling the story, just how you talk about it really being the hub. You know, you're really modeling to what you expect. And before I came to Schoology full time, I worked for a school district for 15 years, you know, in a variety of roles. And I know one of those roles, I was also developing professional development and delivering that. And, you know, I just really saw the greatest impacts when I was modeling it, whether I was doing face-to-face and just kind of like what you described for the process and the extensive professional development, you know, you provided these instructors building these courses. And even if you model using it in a, you know, a blended environment, working with them some face-to-face, some online, just things like that, that definitely has a huge impact.
You know, we see a question about, do we use these materials as an online course or do we use them with teacher direction? I wanted to definitely answer that. We can consider these to be blended course materials, meaning they are definitely not meant to be a standalone online course. They're meant to be used in the classroom, face-to-face with a teacher in a blended fashion.
And next question I saw on there was private schools collaborating. You know, collaboration is going to work wherever you have a common vision, right? So I think, I don't know of any specific private schools collaborating. Although I do know that, you know, there are some groups within Central Ohio. There's several. There's like a tech ed group where a lot of technology leaders come together, and we have private schools there. We have public schools there. So, you know, those are just groups of people meeting, and I'm hoping that, you know, Ohio isn't the only place this occurs. So I hope other areas in the country, you know, there are groups. You just kind of have to get together and, you know, foster that. I can tell you when I was out in you know, a little further outside of Central Ohio working, you know, I kind of prodded people to create a group for that area. And so, you know, it kicked off and it's still going today. So, you know, just have the initiative to, if there isn't a group, create your own and try and get people together, get an agenda, get a vision, make sure everybody's on board. And I think that you'll all be, you know, you'll all benefit from that. Also, there's a question on there about, you know, teachers, is this an additional workload to the teachers? Part of the OBC is that, you know, the districts share the cost of connecting ed in order to have them help facilitate professional development and have them work one-on-one with the teachers through the rubric and do all of the intensive PD. But additionally, we all do pay our teachers a stipend for the content. In some way, shape, or form, there is, they are compensated, whether it's, you know, that is part of their 1 or 2 periods a day that they have, or whether they're actually getting a physical stipend. And I think the majority of us have just done the stipend standpoint. So the teachers are getting paid for this extra content to develop that.
Another question I see is, what grade levels are these courses being created for? Originally, we were developing content in grades 6 through 12, and then this year we actually took it, stepped down a level into elementary and started developing some course materials for 5th grade as well.
Great, thanks for answering those questions. I was kind of going through the list, seeing if I think we've touched base on most of them, some of the questions that have been coming in. Do you guys see anything else that?
I see that there's one question about station rotation and how high that goes. We really see station rotation more like 2nd grade through 12th grade. We're starting to see it more at our primaries. But as teachers start to evolve with their blended learning practice, we do see that they start to gravitate towards individual rotation model, which is another blended learning model. And basically, they're leveraging hyperdocs and creating one page where students might go to a discussion board, or they may go to a video, or they may go to a map or a website. I kind of refer to it almost like as a web quest in the old days. And they take notes and kind of work at their own path and pace. So more towards our upper grades, we see more individual rotation.
So another question that came in was, do you have an estimate as to how long it takes to fully build out a course? Any idea about that?
So yeah, we were very ambitious. We thought we could do that in a year early on. We kind of found that it really is going to take about 2 years. You can get a very good solid core of a course, a very good structure in place, and a lot of content in 1 year. But when you start to dig in, does it differentiate, and does it really? Do you have multiple question banks? Do you have those kind of things? No. And so we're really finding out that we're having to spend a 2nd year on working with that, developing that course. And what we like to do is we like to pull additional educators in to kind of focus in on the content that is in that course and beefing it up, adding more, so that teachers that are using it down the road have options and choices. And then the next question I saw was do you have the support of your administrators? It's kind of funny you asked that question, because that was kind of the issue, one of the issues we had early on, that when I tried this collaborative about 6 or 7 years ago, and it failed. It's because it was some of the top administrators in the area, in those districts, and they just got in a room, and unfortunately they could not they couldn't get over some of these hurdles. They couldn't innovate. And so I was lucky enough that when I did go to another district, and I was working with Jessica and I were both equal administrators in our districts, and we had the blessing from our superintendents to go ahead and try this. They allowed us to play with it and see where we could go with it. And luckily, we brought Jen in, and Jen got the permission from her district as well. And so, once we had a successful year, just the 3 of us, it made it really easy to recruit additional districts. And we're still recruiting. We have, I know we're going to present to probably close to a dozen districts in the next few months that just want to hear more. And this is just in Ohio, about, being part of the Ohio Blended Collaborative, or just learning more about what we do and how they might be able to twist it and do something similar for themselves.
Great, thanks. It looks like we have one additional question that came through. Maybe just some people on the line are wondering, why do you create? Again, I think it goes back, you guys talked about this already a little bit. Why did you do this? But rather than just purchase digital curriculum, if you just want to touch on that just a little bit more, some key points, and then we'll kind of wrap up.
Well, so the ability to personalize the course materials is really the biggest thing that we're able to do through this. Even though we're building a framework and we're building content, once a teacher takes the content, they're able to do whatever they need to do to personalize instruction. So if there's some activity that they always do with their kids and they know that that works, they can add that in. If there is some interactive that they want to put in for one specific child or a small group because that's what they need, they can do it. It just allows the teacher to be very nimble and really responsive to the needs of their kids, whereas purchased digital curriculum at times can be, you're dependent on what the publisher is giving you, and it's also very costly. So there's definitely very costly. So, you know, we're working together, and that's one of the advantages of this collaborative, is that it's a cost-effective way to develop content because we're pooling our financial resources as well as all the other resources we talked about.
Yeah, Jen kind of highlighted that. You know, I was going to say the cost is a large factor. It's not the only factor, and it's not the factor I start with first by any means. But you also, when you buy it, you're buying what they produce, and you don't have any control over it. It's very hard for you to, you know, if you don't like how something is worded, to replace it. If you do it digitally in Schoology and everything is editable, then a teacher can rephrase something, or they can add to it, or they can take away from it, and they can make it their own, which I think is a beautiful thing in order for giving teachers control over that. And there is so much OER content that's out there. There is just so much. I mean, the internet gives us almost unlimited access to information. And if we have educators who are professionals who can vet that information, and they know that this is really well-aligned information, and then they can format that by curating it into a course structure for our teachers, and we've gotten them over that hurdle of wow, that's a lot of work and that's scary, then I think we are doing our students a very good service by putting the teacher in charge of getting the right content in front of the right students at the right time.
Great, thanks for answering that. You know, as we come to an end of this webinar today, I just want to give a huge thank you to the three of you, just for sharing your time, your experience, you know, everything about the Ohio Blended Collaborative, and just really the keys to effective collaboration that you discovered through this process. And Chris, I know you already mentioned this, but I'm going to go ahead and pull the slide up here and share it with everybody. You know, for anyone interested, you do have a website set up, which is ohiobc.org, where they can visit to get more information. And I feel free to add anything to that about what's on your website.
This is part of the evolution of our district, in that we are our collaborative. This is new. We just released it, you know, last week, so it's not very populated, but it is going to become very populated with content. This will be one of our blog posts, without a doubt, putting this video out there, so thank you for that. But you know, we're moving to, you know, kind of organizing and standardizing things for our districts. You know, getting 10 districts, we're kind of getting that position now in our organization where we get questions of, now where's this stored again, and how do I get to that, and I don't remember what was, because we're kind of that shotgun approach where information's all over the place. So we're using the website, we're using a couple other things, we're creating a guide, a handbook
in Schoology.
Yeah, so for everybody. So we're trying to figure out ways, efficiencies, where we can kind of communicate that information. And this is just one of them. We have a lot of districts, a lot of people that ask us about the OBC. So we just created a website so we can send them there, opposed to we did actually have a PDF before that. We were emailing them out. So we're just kind of evolving.
And Gina, if some people ask, you know, how could they learn more information if they want to collaborate on developing professional development materials or OBC materials, they can contact us through that website.
Okay, great. Well, and that kind of gets me into our last slide as we wrap up today, some final points. You know, another way they can connect with us and just continue the conversation. I know all four of us are on Twitter, you know, and if you look at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see, if you just want to tweet with that Learn with Schoology hashtag, we're all on. We would love to continue the conversation. You could ask more questions. That's another way to keep in touch with all of us. Also, the Schoology team will share a recording of this webinar very soon with everyone that registered. And then also, if you're interested in just learning more about Schoology, you're going to see a couple different links on this slide. You can just visit Schoology.com to learn more about our learning management system. But also, if you want to learn more about the Schoology professional development services that are provided, you can also visit Schoology.com/PD. And as we wrap up, I just want to thank everyone for attending, and just again, thank the three of you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your knowledge. It's really wonderful and very powerful what you guys are doing in Ohio. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody have a fabulous rest of the week.